Hello listeners, welcome to the Enfield Microphone Magazine for 2012. Hello listeners, it's Keith de Jersey. I'm the new editor of the Enfield Microphone Magazine. It's my first edition, so I hope I get it right for you. On this side we'll be hearing about Barber Surgeons, the Losing Patients campaign, Life in the Jungle, A Short History of Ponder's End, Steam Cars, and a visit to the Cheshire Home. On side 2, we'll have an article on the Trans-Siberian Railway and a visit to Concord. So we start with Peter Jones, and we're going back to medieval England with an article on barber surgeons.
I'm here on the Castle Green, and I've come to have my hair trimmed. Now, you may think this is a very strange place, but this is where the barber has set up his red and white tent. It does give me a bit of concern because at his feet he's got a very large bowl of blood, and his apron, well, that defies description, really.
It's very clean. It's clean on this morning.
Am I safe in your hands?
You are perfectly safe, sir. I've done a 10-year apprenticeship, and I am now a master barber surgeon.
And where are your delicate scissors that you're going to trim my hair with?
Well, here, sir. I know you might think they look like sheep shears, but you have quite a fine mop of hair there. I can give you a good soldierly haircut with these.
Please explain the state of your apron and this bowl of blood. This is what concerns me.
You see, most of my clientele, they cannot read or write. So I have to display what I do. If I was a cobbler, I'd have shoes hanging outside. If I was a potter, I'd have pots. But because I'm a barber surgeon, I have a red and white tent. The white is the bandages, the red is the blood. And to show I'm actually open for business, I have a bowl of blood in my doorway of my tent. The smell of it is also fairly indicative of the fact that I take blood. I've got 3 trades in one. I'm a haircutter, but I'm also the castle dentist. But my third job is I'm the local accident and emergency department. I've got lancets, long, pointed, stabbing instruments to stab and squeeze all the pus out.
And sterilise before you use them, of course.
Oh, definitely. That's what the apron's for. Give them a good spit and a good polish on my apron before I start. My tent is also filled full of weaponry. As a medieval barber surgeon, I need to study the implements that cause injury. I've got 2 arrows in front of me. I've got a very simple long bodkin, which is a very, very sharp point, designed to go through the gaps in the mail. Although many of the arrowheads weren't glued on, you'll notice I've just taken this arrowhead off.
That's right.
It's only loosely pushed onto the end of the shaft. And he might think he can pull it straight out. He grabs the shaft, pulls it out, the shaft comes away, leaving the head inside. Very nasty trick. That would then get infected and he would die blood poisoning several days or even weeks later. Medieval theory of medicine goes right back to the time of the ancient Greeks and the Romans, and that's based on the theory of the 4 humours of the body. There's blood, phlegm, there's yellow bile, which resides in the liver, and there's black bile, which resides in the spleen. One of the most common of the 4 humours to get out of balance is blood. It is there in abundance in the youth. That's why the youth of any age are rebellious, they're angry, they're violent, spotty. That's all the hot moistness coming out in their blood. Don't feed your kids meat. And if they've got too much blood, then as a surgeon, I want to take some away. The best and most effective way is leeches.
They're very small.
Well, that's because these guys haven't fed yet. When they feed, they go from around about 2 inches, probably about a quarter inch wide. Feed them for an hour or so, they'll go from that sort of size to a good Winston Churchill-sized cigar. Black bile is the thing that, as you get older and older, you get an increased amount of it. It's why old people are dry and cold and wizened and full of melancholia. That's the black bile. I've got a fair success rate, which is why I've been employed by one of the most powerful men during these troubled times of the Wars of the Roses.
And you don't see them again. Either they're cured or they're dead.
That's true. You don't get many complaints.
Well, who'd have wanted medical treatment then, eh? Thank goodness times have changed now. That was an interesting item. Next we've got Diane de Jersey talking about losing patients. The campaign started in 2009. I think it's still running, and it's sponsored by RNIB. So over to my wife, Diane.
This article appeared in RNIB's Vision magazine, which is a magazine for RNIB members. If you'd like to become a member of RNIB, please contact the membership team on 0303 123 4555 or email membership@rnib.org.uk. We want to read our own health information. This was the message that came over loud and clear at a recent Losing Patients event in London. Vision editor Claire Connolly went along to hear more. Nobody wants to have to ask a next-door neighbour to read them the results of a personal health test or to miss important hospital appointments because they couldn't read the standard print letter sent to them. But unfortunately, these are just a couple of examples of the problems that many blind and partially sighted people frequently face. Losing Patients is our campaign to tackle this situation by calling for health information in accessible formats. There have been a series of events around the country to bring people with sight loss together with their local health authorities, MPs and others who could help change this situation. What happened at the Enfield event? Over 60 people gathered at the Disability Centre in Enfield, London, last November to hear the personal stories of some people with sight loss and headline results of the Dr. Foster research report, which reveals the extent of the problem of the lack of accessible information. Other speakers included MPs Andy Love and Joan Ryan, and Pam Adams, the Deputy Lord Mayor of Enfield, gave a rousing closing speech. The event, which was also attended by representatives of the local NHS, was jointly organised by RNIB and Enfield Vision and supported by Middlesex Association of the Blind and the Haringey Phoenix Group. Personal stories about the lack of accessible information. One of the personal stories came from local resident Veronica, who lost her sight due to diabetes and has been asking her ophthalmology clinic for correspondence in an audio format for over 6 years. All the information comes to me on a very thin paper with a poor standard of print, and I can't even manage it with my monomouse magnifier. When I've asked for audio information, the hospital's response is that they work from a central system for distributing hospital appointment letters, and they can't alter that in any way. I have to say that I consider it is a breach to my right to privacy, which is a basic human right. Jill, who lost her sight about 6 years ago at the age of 35, told the meeting about her worrying experience. I wasn't informed of the side effects for certain tablets, so it was only when a sighted person read the leaflet out to me that I realised I could be experiencing them. It was stressful for me because I didn't know whether I was ill and run down or it was a side effect. It would have made a big difference to have been informed about them at the time the tablets were prescribed, or otherwise to have had that information on tape or CD. What can I do? Hugh Huddy, RNIB Campaigns Officer, says, It's vital that everyone asks for the accessible formats they need. We have an obligation as blind and partially sighted people to notify GPs and hospital clinics of the format we need. However, everyone agreed today that you shouldn't have to ask for it over and over again. We have a nurse checklist or toolkit that can help you. Hugh is also hoping that more local societies will continue to run events, he explains. The Primary Care Trust in Sheffield has taken the issue of accessible information far more seriously since we launched the Losing Patients campaign there. The more local societies that get involved, the bigger noise this makes. So do encourage your local society to take up this campaign and to organise an event if they haven't already. Nurse checklist. N is for notify service providers of your needs in writing with our letter template. U and R is understand your rights with the DDA fact sheet and learn about your rights under the new NHS Constitution. S and E is have your say by engaging with local groups representing patient interests to healthcare providers. For a nurse pack or more information, contact the campaigns team on 0207 391 2123 or email campaigns@rnib.org.uk.
Well, thank you, Di, for the item on losing patients. The campaign is still running. Next we hear from John Patterson. He's in the jungle and he's giving a report on how human intervention is affecting the wildlife. So now over to John Patterson.
I'm surrounded by trees, towering above impenetrable jungle. 50 miles to the west and north lies the great Pacific Ocean. 100 miles to the east is Colombia. A mere 25 miles to the south is the equator. I dare not leave the steep mountain path for fear of losing it. Day is about to break. The howler monkeys have started. Nothing in the forest makes more noise. That is, if you exclude the chainsaws and logging trucks. The survival of these monkeys is under threat. Howlers live in the treetops, seldom coming down to the ground. Their morning calls state their firm belief in their right to this territory. Another of the local inhabitants is the spider monkey. They're not so noisy, so they're harder to find. That scream comes from a spider monkey. They're just under 2 feet in height, with a tail 1.5 times that length again. They're not as big as the howlers, but they're still by no means small. One day I came across a troop of spider monkeys gleaning the treetops for leaves and fruit. The only sound coming from them was the sound of the leaves as they moved about, and the occasional breaking of a branch. Then one of the troop spotted me and came over to see what business I had on his territory. kept coming till he was immediately overhead, some 20 feet above me. I can say with absolute certainty that he was immediately overhead, because the next thing I knew was that my recorder, on the ground in front of me, was being liberally watered. I can't say whether this was accidental or deliberate, but it was effective. I felt obliged to move. Another time I heard a howler monkey sounding off on his own. I got close enough to see what was going on. There he was, sitting in the top of a tree, looking like a grumpy old man, munching away at the tender leaves. He was surrounded by a group of smaller monkeys trying to pinch his food. It was a troop of capuchin monkeys. These are smaller and daintier than the howlers and the spider monkeys, and they have the quaintest face, fringed by a hood of erect hair. As I crept closer, one of them spotted me and left the main group to come and investigate. His voice, try as he might, was only just audible, hardly frightening. But once again, like the spider monkey I'd met previously, he was directly above my head and breaking off branches to throw at me. The rest of the troop was taking absolutely no notice of the howler's protest and continued to steal his food. Nor did they care about my presence, and left the job of chasing me away to their one delegate. I couldn't help being acutely aware of the enormous privilege of watching these fascinating creatures acting out their harmless little battles of everyday life. But neither could I help feeling terribly sad. Their feeble protests against intruders will never be heeded. The trees all around are being felled. The howls and pitiful squeals of the monkeys will be drowned by the roar of chainsaws. And if we let the forest go, that will be the end of them.
Well, next we've got Robin Bester with some of the history of Ponder's End.
Ponder's End has been the butt of many jokes on the radio and television in programmes such as Round the Horn, with humorous references to the Bishop of Ponder's End or the Duchess of Ponder's End. I have often wondered about how the area got its name. Who was Ponder? And how did he meet his end? Ponder's End was marked on the 1822 Ordnance Survey map, but was recorded as early as 1593 as Ponder's Ender, end being spelt E-N-D-E. It was the end or area of the parish where the Ponder family lived, Ender, E-N-D-E, being a Middle English word, and survives in many place names such as Hatch End, Crouch End, etc., but the final E has been lost over a period of time. A document dating from 1373 mentions a John Ponder living in the area. His surname is believed to mean a keeper of or dweller by a fish or mill pond. The fact that there has been a flour mill in the area near the River Lee for centuries probably substantiates this.
Well, thank you, Robin, for that little history of Ponder's End. That's where I live, and I've often wondered where it gets its name from. I don't know. Next, here's Mike Dickin with an article on steam cars.
You'd have to be well into your 90s to remember this sound.
See it up anywhere? Oh, right.
That was a very sedate arrival. Looking at this car,
Yes.
It's a Stanley from which era?
This is 1907.
1907.
It's what's called a 20 horsepower gentleman's speedy roadster. That's
You
what
look
they
like a
describe
gentleman
it
to
as.
me.
Oh, thank you, sir. I'm
You
not
seem to
sure I'm
qualify.
speedy. But it was really one of the first sports cars. And when you look at it, it's a very sporting looking thing. And it was sold as a sports car. They claimed, if you read their advert, they claimed that it would do 75 miles an hour. I'm not sure. I haven't dared go more than about 60.
But
You need a
it
lot
does
of road.
look like a normal car, doesn't it? When did the steam car reign?
Well, in the very early part of the last century, really, from about 1900 through till 1905, particularly in America.
So it's a short lifespan. So there was a time when the steam car was in competition with the internal combustion engine.
Well, that really began to happen as the internal combustion engine got a bit more sophisticated and started to work properly, which really basically means from 1903-4 onwards through till about 1908 or 1910. And by then, really the steam car was outclassed because it didn't have an electric starter. And there was all the faff of having to fire it up. You didn't just go wine handle and go.
How did the steam car start up so quickly then? And how was it so popular?
Well, much more in America than in Europe. I mean, steam cars, there were steam cars made in Europe, but not very, very many. But it was very popular in America. And steam cars were particularly popular in America, I suspect, because the technology was so simple and it was known to every blacksmith. Anybody could fix a boiler. There were boiler shops all over the place.
Just an extension of the steam age.
Very much so, yes. And the petrol car, which was coming in at that time, this was completely new technology, and actually nobody understood it, really, basically. That was the reason for the greater success of the steam car. And then, as petrol cars got much easier to start, electric starters fitted on from about 1912 onwards, then really the steam car, had it probably. But the last ones which were seriously made were around about 1932 or 3.
As late as that?
Yes, Dobles were a very famous American make. They didn't make very many, but they manufactured them.
Who were the manufacturers? Any names that I'd recognise?
Well, over the entire life of the steam car as a species, there were about 50 or 60,000 vehicles made, and of those, Stanley made round about 11,000, and so did another make, White, which was also quite successful, in fact very successful between 1900 and 1910. But in 1910 they saw the light and stopped making steam vehicles and transferred all their production to petrol vehicles. And actually, as a consequence, they're still in existence making trucks.
What were the selling points of the steam car? There must have been some lovely adverts.
Very much so. Stanley's in the very early days, because they did a lot of record breaking. And in 1906, they became very ambitious, and they decided they would have a go at the land speed record, which they did. And it did 127 miles an hour, which was about 25 miles an hour faster than the previous best land speed record, and that was 1906. And a car like this, the same exact model as this, on the same day did 84 miles an hour.
They weren't sold on convenience.
They were sold on convenience. One of the kind of markets that they had, they sell them to doctors. Because with a steamer, you can leave the pilot light going, which will keep the pressure up. And in fact, what they did, they used to plug the pilot light into the town gas mains and keep the pilot light going overnight, so that they could keep the pressure up. And they could be very quick and ready to go. And for a doctor who was probably doing, maybe 25, 30 miles on his rounds during the day, that's about the range before you have to start putting more water in a Stanley. Although the Stanley is very convenient and simple to drive in many ways, there's also a lot of background fiddling around that you have to do, a lot of maintenance and working on it and so on.
And it must be a mucky thing to drive.
Very.
It's the kind of arrangement which would appeal to men, not to women, I should
Yeah,
think.
I think so. Yes, probably right.
There
Although there are some pretty good lady drivers, I have to say.
Water. Going in.
At last, I was invited to take a spin in this 96-year-old open tourer with no windscreen or seat belts. I couldn't wait.
It makes you laugh, doesn't it?
It does make you laugh.
Okay, well, I'll just open the throttle, you'll hear what it sounds like.
Okay. Gee whiz. The wind is blowing through what little hair I've got. Shall we go out onto the Starport Road then? Get some speed going. And here's one of your colleagues.
He's got the whistle. Well done.
That's another Stanley. Left here.
Right.
It does make you laugh. It's ridiculous. We're in the unrestricted area, so you can really let her rip now. Here we go. Final burst of speed before the 30. 30, 35. It's as if we're in a gale. You don't realise how much a windscreen saves you.
Absolutely, yes. But particularly when it starts to rain hard, you feel as though you're being sandblasted. Where did we come out? We came out of here, didn't we?
That's right. Follow him round. Well, that was fantastic. That was probably the ride of my life. I never expect to experience this again.
Oh, well, there you go.
Well, that was a very, very interesting article. Can you imagine a load of those cars driving around the M25 today? Who knows?